Hi, let's talk about social change in light of new research in physics. Um, the physics is changing from a kinetic crashing collision type to an elastic communication where things are passively oriented and they produce fields. And these fields then produce fields, one field, two field, three field, and then kinetic effect field. So four fields, primary species of field. And these are all created over different distances. And as each different distance entangles, it produces a different rate density. So each entanglement is unique. What this does for us is gives us what we call free energy. And free energy means that once you set up or engineer plates that entangle in a certain way, then we'll be able to motivate atoms to move in specific directions and do specific things. It's going to do huge things for society. It means that the present industry in oil will change. And we'll be able to clean up environments like oceans and waters and land. We'll be able to, with regard to business practices, we'll be able to lower the energy cost, lower the hard cost of doing business for everybody. I think the thing to think about, the problems we face today, one, global economic contraction. It's really stymied economists to understand or put their finger on the causes. And yet, for some reason, if you look at it from an outside perspective, all of the metrics, the things that we measure, efficiencies, productivities, economies of scale, these things motivate businesses to make products with fewer people. That's pretty much the bottom line. But more cheaply, and in mass quantities, and the capitalist society that we have kind of builds extremes, extremes in price, both high and low, and extremes then translate from product into land and to energy and into all these different facets of human life. Everything that we do, cars that we drive, to water that we drink, are all translated price extremes. And so it becomes very difficult to live, just to do. And I'll give you an example. When Columbus came over, the Native Americans said that there were 20 million people down in South America and 80 million in the Northern Americas. Let's see, North America and Canada. 80 million people. And they were all employed. There was no unemployment. Everybody had a job to do. But we don't do that. You have to be specifically qualified to, walk down the street. And there are fewer and fewer corporations. There used to be a Fortune 500, now it's a Fortune 50. We need business. But, when you look at exchange, economy is kind of the fancy way of saying exchange. When you look at exchange from a physics standpoint, atoms and things, they carefully align passively, okay? And there's a lot that happens after that. There's fields that are produced, and then atoms move within those fields. And so a whole bunch of stuff kind of takes place when things communicate. But when you look at the corporate capital economy, that's the very opposite happens. Someone buys a $60,000 car, everything ends for that person for the next 5 years. And if an American does, or a European or anyone else does what a lot of people do, they keep buying cars, then that person has a disposable income that's far less, upwards of $1,000 a month less, to become involved in an economy. And this is not the only example. Houses. Not 5 years, but 30 years. The person to buy a house then is taken out of the economy, okay? And I know we hear arguments from capitalists, people with money, arguing always in the last 30, 40 years, almost like propaganda, that, oh, capitalism creates economy and things like that. Well, I think what happens is it creates economy for a few families, and I think what we've seen in the last 10, 20 years is that there are about 60 families that have benefited from this type of exchange, where we mass produce cheaply and things aren't made very well. But let's take the example of just a South American farmer, a coffee bean grower, who grows coffee beans, and he supports his family, okay? And along comes Starbucks, all right? And they say, well, they sell to everyone in the village now, okay? And they say, you have to spend $5 for a coffee drink, and they're going to buy up all the beans in this little village. So the farmer has no more beans. He can't buy any more seed or any beans, whatever, to produce. And suddenly he's out of a job because that picking and selling, that's kind of a nominal price that just satisfies his daily means for income, food and water, let's just say, is taken away by price extremes. Perhaps extremely low cost for beans. Maybe the farmer, let's just say the farmer was able to get more for his beans. You know, maybe he traded the sack of beans for, I don't know, a donkey ride or something like that. But anyway, the value of the bean or the commodity in the capitalistic economy is either goes extremely low or high, beyond this relative value that is good for exchange for that individual market. Okay? I guess I didn't explain it very well, but that poor farmer, maybe the beans are too cheap so that he could never grow enough to do what he used to do. And then to sell the cup of coffee, it's so expensive that no one in the village can afford it. Okay? So that's kind of where we are. There are other facets of capitalistic economies that slow exchange down, and one of them is debt. Just the use of debt instruments themselves. Having a note. Municipalities have notes. States, federal government has a note, and individuals have notes. Debt that takes away from that monies, that monthly income that they can have as disposable income. It takes away from economy. So there are many reasons, I guess, that capitalistic economy is bad. And the way to solve that is very simple. It's just to do away with the corporation. The corporation was formed during the slave trade, I believe, in some wealthy businessmen in Britain and Europe needed a way to protect the slave trade, the slaves, their investment in the slaves. And so they designed this business, this corporation. We need to outlaw corporations. And we need to bring back family business so that the economy can flourish. And we can do that now with this new physics more easily.